You are locked inside the Stingray Show, and coming up on this edition, we're going to be joined by a Alabama native who played wide receiver for Bobby Bowden, his father at West Virginia, then coached at Auburn, Florida State, Duke, Alabama, and Kentucky before becoming the head coach of both Tulane and then Clemson, the Tigers. We are going to be discussing all of his career with the legendary coach Tommy Bowden on this edition of the Stingray Show.
Hi, this is Tim Brando with a reminder. Those of you on Tide 100.9, look out. You're about to feel the buzz of Stingray.
This is Stephen Ray, a.k.a. Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
I'm Heath Hopkins. I'm here in DeSoto County, Mississippi, right outside of Memphis, Tennessee.
You know, Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you feel that responsibility to pay it forward and give some kid a chance coming up in the ranks, kind of like Tony did for you?
Why do you think I'm talking to Stingray tonight?
Thank you, man. I appreciate
that.
No,
I mean, look, no.
Hey, Stingray, here's the deal. When you get involved with Texas, it's like getting married to a stripper. and let me explain this. It looks good. It's kind of sexy on the surface. Yeah. But then you get the baggage, you get the drama, you get all that eventually comes with it. And that's what you get with Texas, and that's what the Big 12 learned.
And Heath, any thoughts on our show moving forward?
Hey, to everyone in Tuscaloosa listening here on Tide 100.9, with the Stingray Show, if you don't like it, you better learn to love it, because it's the best show going today, baby. Woo!
This is Stingray, host of the Stingray Show, reminding you if you like our content and you like our episodes, wherever you are listening to this from, whether it be YouTube or on Spotify, make sure you subscribe to our content for all of the latest information and latest episodes. And without further ado, here is another great episode, so enjoy and continue listening. And with that, I want to welcome you inside yet another edition of the Stingray Show right here on Tide 100.9. And I got to give you a little bit more accolades on our guest this evening. He won Conference USA Championship and Conference USA Coach of the Year in 1998, and then was a two-time ACC Coach of the Year, once in 1999 and the other time in 2003. And his coaching record, he recorded a record of 90 wins and 49 losses. Heath, our guest this evening, is the former coach for Alabama and Auburn, and then the head coach of undefeated Tulane and then Clemson.
You know, Stephen, it was fun watching his career. You know, growing up in the Memphis area, I've always kept my eye on University of Memphis. And when he went to Tulane, I was like, why would anyone take that job? Tulane hadn't won in decades.
Yep.
And then he went undefeated. And so it was a huge deal. I remember watching him. I believe they went to the Liberty Bowl that year. I remember watching that. And so when he went off to Clemson, I was kind of like, man, I don't know if he's going to end up in the SEC or not, but I'm glad I don't see him every weekend. You know, I thought he was just going to come in and just tear the college football world down. And you know what, Stephen? He kind of did.
So, Heath, let's not keep our guest waiting. Here is Mr. Head Coach Tommy Bowden, formerly of the Clemson Tigers. Coach Bowden, how are things with you, my friend?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. You know, Stingray, I was listening to that introduction when I think you said that I was a son of Bobby Bowden. I started my career as a young coach at Florida State, coach for him. And, you know, trying to be as impressive as I could. So for the first few years, his assistant coaches would say, "There's that little SOB, son of Bobby. There's that little son of Bobby getting us in trouble." So yeah, it reminded me of that when you introduced me. Yeah, SOB, son of Bobby.
Coach, looking back at your career, and you mentioned there with your father, did he kind of razz you a little bit, or did he stay hard on you, or did he treat you as a professional, or did you have to do a little extra to impress Dad? I mean, what was it like coaching with Dad?
The hardest part is probably the coaching against him, which, a good coach, a good staff, good players, that's always going to be difficult in regards to who the coach is. What was really difficult was the recruiting part, because there was recruiting is getting close to the family and building trust in the family. And I can remember one time we were recruiting a great prospect, and I had the first visit. Then my father was going to come in right after me. So I was leaving about 8 o'clock at night, and the mother and the dad and the boy were at the front door meeting me. And as I was walking down the driveway, I said hello to my father. He walked up on the porch, and when he walked up on the porch, he had the mother. He was great with the mothers. Had his arm around his mother, and he turned around and he said, "Hey, Tommy," he said, "don't forget, your mama wants you to call her." And I said, "Oh, geez, just makes me feel about that big. There's the goat going in there, and I got to go rely on my mother. Like, I'm not going to be able to take care of her son." So hard part was recruiting. It was very competitive, but it's all about getting the best players.
Well, Coach, who got that player? I mean,
he got that.
You were both going after that guy.
He got that one, but there was another one, C.J. Spiller. I don't know if you remember him, great running back from Florida that everybody was after. And back then they had one signing date. I flew down to meet with him on 2 weeks before signing date. Had a great visit, huge household of family, and of course coaches. They make first thing you do. It's plan strategy. First of all, you want to go love up on the little kids in the house. You want the mother to see that you're good with kids. And then you got to love up on that mother and sell her, because usually she's the one that's closest to her son. So I went in and did all the meat and everything, got them little kids and hugged up on them, set them on my lap, sang to them. And then I got the mother and I loved up on her, called her into the kitchen and said, "Listen, Mrs. Spiller, I hope your son comes to Clemson. I just want to be happy. I don't care where he goes. I do want you to know my father's coming here next week, and I think we ought to put all the cards on the table. Let's just be honest. I don't care where he goes. I just want to be happy. But my father had 6 children, and I'm one of the 6. And I just want you to know my father used to beat us when we were children." And, so next week he was coming in. I knew how good he was. I said, "Miss, but I don't care where he goes. I just want to be happy." My father comes in next week, and he's the master. Word's gotten out. Small town, Lake Butler, Florida, Union County High School. So he, of course, every house has a spy. The running back coach might be from Florida State, the defensive coach from Florida. So it got back to my father. He does the same thing when he comes. He's the master. He's got grandkids. He's great with them kids. He bounces them on his knees, sings to them, let them slobber on them and all that stuff. And he works the room. He works the mother and pulls the mother off in the kitchen. Says, "Mrs. Spiller, can I talk to you for a minute?" She says, "Yeah." So he goes in there and says, "Listen, I don't care where CJ goes. I just want to be happy, but we ought to uncover all the cards on the table. I want you to know, Mrs. Spiller, I had 6 children, and Tommy was one of my 6. She said, "Yeah." He says, "I just want you to know, of all my children, Tommy lied the most." And then he said, "I don't care where he goes. I just want to be happy, but I think you ought to know that." And of course, I lied.
Oh, boy.
I lied good enough to beat him, and we beat him the next 4 out of 5 years. But so it's all about maybe stretching the truth to get the good play. Nowadays, all you got to have is money. Those stories would be irrelevant. Who's got the biggest bag nowadays?
So
Stephen, we got to get Miss Spiller on. It'll get her version of the story of this one as well.
I might embellish just a tad. We did get him. Now we got him, but I might embellish just a little bit.
But you probably had the biggest bag too, right? Wink, wink.
Yeah, well, back then that wasn't. Dabo Swinney was the recruiting coach. The head coach was only allowed to come off once a week. But it was all about relationships and who built the most trust. And Dabo, the reason I hired him, he had a great resume at Alabama as a recruiter, did a great job for me recruiting. He recruited C.J. Spiller, but he built up a great trust relationship. Now that's irrelevant. You just come in, maybe make a text with a phone call and say, "Hey, I got $4 million, he's got 2, which makes more sense to you." So all that hard building relationships, that's pretty much out the door. You don't do that anymore, and that was one of Dabo's strengths. And I think that's another reason why he fought that paying players so much, because his forte was building relationships. He was great. And if you bring the money in, that takes that aspect out of it. And he fought that. Yeah. I don't know if you remember some of his comments. Boy, he fought pay him a lot of money, for a long time.
So, Coach Bowden, hold that thought. We are up against our first break, and when we come back, We're going to dive into your playing days for your father at West Virginia. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to The Stingray Show. We will be right back with Tommy Bowden. Do you currently have a bass fishing lake, but you're not happy with the size of bass that are coming out of the lake? Springtime is the perfect time to stock your lake with fish that will help you grow larger bass. Currently, right now, from Honey Hole Fisheries, they can offer threadfin shad, copper-nosed bluegill, minnows, golden shiners, and tilapia to help grow larger bass in your lake. You can contact Honey Hole Fisheries at 205-799-0192. Once again, that is 799-0192. Honey Hole Fisheries also offers Texas Hunter fish feeders. Contact him today to grow bigger bass in your dream lake. Welcome back inside the Stingray Show. Our guest this evening is Tommy Bowden, the former coach for Tulane and Clemson and son of Bobby Bowden. And Coach, I want to talk about you briefly. What are you doing nowadays now that you are retired? Are you enjoying it?
I'm babysitting is what I'm over in Mobile, Alabama, babysitting with my daughter, who's in Hawaii for a week with her husband. So then I'm headed to Atlanta. My other grandson's got a birthday. So, when you got grandchildren, you spend a lot of time going up there and going and trying to get to baseball games, soccer games, grandparents weekend a couple of weekends ago. Now another one's got a birthday in Atlanta. So a lot of that. Then I still do a lot of Christian speaking, faith-based speaking. I'm going to Chicago next Friday night. Then we're going to plane fly home, go over to Tallahassee, speak Saturday at the church, and then I'm headed up Andalusia, Alabama for a men's dinner here coming up. So I do a lot of Christian speaking. Got about 5 or 6 of those coming up, and that's probably most of my time.
So, Coach Bowden, tell us a little bit about that, the Christian speaking that you do.
They say, like father, like son. I had a great role model as a father, not only as a coach, where I had got great wisdom and advice on coaching strategy and procedure, but also as a godly man, a godly father, a godly husband. I got to witness that firsthand. How's a godly coach act after a loss, and things like that, and how's he handle the pressure? Contract comes up and the board's meeting and all that stuff. So I got to see that firsthand, and that was really beneficial to me as far as how you can coach. My father, I coached for him, played for him for four years, and then coached for him about 4 years. I think I only heard him curse maybe 4 or 5 times. And,
Wow.
It's a tough profession, and it's a game of emotion, energy, enthusiasm, effort, intensity, and you got to coach it that way. But he was, I tell you, a lot of people, the best way to describe him was the fact that on Monday through Friday, he lived the New Testament, but on Saturday, his teams played from the Old Testament. It was an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It was knocked down. Israelites were getting ready to go into Israel, and God said, kill them all, the women, the children, and wipe out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, all them people. And that's what his teams did, for 14 straight years. He was top 5 in AP, which will never be broken because of the transfer portal. So, I learned that you can still have tough, aggressive, hard-nosed team without, really damaging the English language with cursing and stuff like that. You can still be hard-nosed. So I learned a lot of it professionally, but some of the Christian godly aspects of trying to be a godly man and father, I've tried to uphold too. And that's where I got he spoke at these events his whole career. When he retired and I was retired, we used to double team and go together and speak. And so that's kind of what I continue to do.
Thank you,
Coach. I wanted to ask you, I thought about this idea for a book. I've never written a book in my life. I'm probably not going to, but how important is it to know who the heroes are of your father? I thought about that one time and I was like, that's important to me. My father's 80 years old. And I was like, I want to know his hero. I know he loved John Wayne and those guys, but who were his heroes in life and who influenced him? If you had to guess, who were those heroes for your father?
Well, as a young coach, he was up at Howard College, which is now Sanford in Birmingham, became a head coach and automatically looking for players. And some guy named Bear Bryant was taking the job up there down in Alabama, downtown Tuscaloosa, 50 miles away. And Coach Bryant was going to come in, and he ended up running off a lot of players. And my father asked my father to come down. They came down, stood out there, and Coach Bryant says, I'm going to run that one off. I'm going to run that one off. I'm going to run that one off. I'll send him down there to Howard. I think that's why he won so many games. But I know he studied him and watched him a lot. He mentioned a guy like General Neyland at Tennessee, who I did not know that much about. He mentioned Darrell Royals and Frank Broyles.
Yeah.
You know, those type of people are the ones that I think he kind of mentored. You know, he did not play for like a lot of young coaches will play for a Bo Schembechler, or play for Woody Hayes, play for an Urban Meyer or a Bear Bryant. My father didn't do that. He played at Howard, you know, and so he didn't have anybody to help him along in the profession. Terry and I went in the coaching profession, but we had the resources of my father, whereas he didn't have anybody like that. But I know those would be some of the names that he leaned on for instruction and advice.
So, Coach Bowden, you talked about briefly playing for your father at West Virginia from 1973 through 1976. Please give us a couple of your fondest memories of playing for your father up at West Virginia.
Or embarrassing moments.
I walked on at West Virginia and earned a scholarship. Started from my father in 75. We went to the Peach Bowl, beat Lou Holtz and NC State. He left in 76, went to West Virginia, and I played my last year for a guy named Frank Signetti. One of the things he told me about walking on, and even when I went into the coaching profession, he said, son, you better have patience and you better have perseverance. And if you have those, you'll eventually play. And I did. I walked on scout team, red shirt, beat up, but I finally ended up starting. Plus, I knew I would eventually play because my mother was sleeping with a head coach. I said, I got a chance. If she's betting the head coach, I said, I got a chance to play. So I eventually played, and fortunately, we didn't throw the ball a whole bunch back then, but I think my senior year, I did drop one pass that year. It happened to be against NC State in a bowl game. Those are the ones that I remember. But had some memorable, some really good season there in 75 is what I remember most about that.
Coach, you mentioned Lou Holtz there, and Lou Holtz told a hilarious story in his book about your father, and I just died laughing because when I was reading his book, I'm reading it in Lou Holtz's voice. But he said that when he was coaching at William and Mary and he was coming back home to West Virginia and he was going to play, and he was playing your father first game of the season. And he said he had 80 something tickets to the game, and old high school coaches and friends and next door neighbors and folks he went to church with and old teammates and everybody. And your dad put a beating on him that day and beat the pants off of him. And I want to say it was something crazy, 50 something to 3, 60 something to 3. And he said he was so mad at Bobby. He said, here's my good friend, and he's beating the pants off of me. And we go out there to shake hands at midfield. And he said, Bobby, why'd you run the score up on me? And he said, your dad looked at him and goes, Lou, it's not my job to keep my team out of the end zone.
There's probably some truth to that. I think there would be. And both of those guys, they were great recruiters because they were great storytellers and would embellish a story. Coach Holtz probably embellishes that just a little bit, but I could see that being true. When you mentioned tickets, I was at my grandson's baseball game the other day, and a guy recognized me. He said, I heard your father speak, and great speaker. And he said, I remember one joke he told me. And when you mentioned tickets and Lou Holtz, and I thought you were going to mention that time when the story my father tells me went to Florida State, but they weren't drawing anybody. I mean, nobody would come to the games. Head coach got 10 tickets. He was going to use 6 of them, had 4 left. He couldn't give them away. He tried to give them to the janitor, tried to give them to the neighbor. Nobody would take them. Friday before the game, he goes to get a haircut downtown and takes his 4 tickets out of his pocket, sticks them on his windshield, figuring when he gets back from his haircut, somebody will have taken the tickets. So he went to get a haircut, came back, and instead of 4 tickets, there was 8. Somebody put 4 more down. I told that story when I went to Tulane. We weren't drawing very well. My father told it. We went to Florida State. And when you mentioned tickets, I thought that was the one. That's kind of an old coaching story. But it's funny that but my father spoke. He probably heard my father spoke 20 years ago. But he remembered that story about the tickets last week at a baseball game in Mobile.
So, Coach Bowden, You coached at both Auburn and then at Alabama under head coach Bill Curry. Talk about both of those experiences of Auburn and then Alabama, please.
The first thing I learned was the hatred. It is very deep and very sincere. And I've coached in some great rivalries: Florida State, Clemson, South Carolina, Duke, North Carolina. You know, some really good. That one's just flat out cold blooded. They don't go for flesh wounds. They go to cut the neck and stab you in the heart and all that stuff. And that's the first thing I learned. And then the loyalty to the school. Go to Alabama. You don't wear orange. You don't own anything orange. You go to Auburn. You don't own anything red, close to red, maroon, whatever you want to call it. You don't own it. And after coaching at both of them, I learned that the most important color is green. You know, which one's paying your salary. And you better do the best job you can. But you know, for a guy born in Birmingham and coaching heaven to me. I said, man, if I could just coach one of them places, man, what a great honor. But to coach at both of them, man, I could have died and gone to heaven after I did that, because that was just a great dream to coach at both of those places and have success at both places. 10-1 one time in Alabama, played Miami in Sugar Bowl and went undefeated with my brother Terry. So I was fortunate to experience success at both those places. And what a great place to have success.
So, Coach Bowden, what was it like coaching under Bill Curry, please?
Well, you know, he was a attention to detail guy. I coached his wide receivers. He let me coach them, and but he had his hand in everything as far as the operation. Wasn't much of an X and O guy. He wasn't going to tell you to run this. He hired a guy named Homer Smith. I don't know if you remember him, a great offensive coordinator, and let him go. He had a guy named Don Lindsay on defense, and he let them coach. He was the manager of the staff, manager of the team, support staff, and made everything work together. But was not an X and O guy, but extremely organized.
So, Coach Bowden, hold that thought. We are up against yet another break, and when we come back, we are going to continue the interview with Coach Bowden. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Stingray Show. We will be right back. It's coming up on dinner time, and how does a boneless smoked chicken breast sound? Or maybe even a smoked wing plate? Or cheesesteak fries. This is what you will find and a whole lot more at the Coker Market, located in Coker, Alabama, at the four-way intersection right off of County Road 140. Now, the owner, Jamie, went to culinary school, so he knows what he is doing when it comes to food at the Coker Market. Their hours of operation are Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until 7 p.m., and they are closed Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Go by there today and see Jamie and all of the staff and get some amazing food at the Coker Market. Coach, do you have about 10 more minutes?
Yeah, let's do 10 minutes, and I've got some chores with my wife here in Mobile Bay. Yeah, we do one more segment, you can kind of work me out.
Thank you.
All right.
Heath, do you want to bring us back because you have a question?
Sure, we'll do it. Welcome back to the Stingray Show. I'm Heath Hopkins along with Stephen Ray, and Stingray and I's guest tonight is none other than Coach Tommy Bowden. And Coach Bowden, you were talking about Bill Curry. Coach, I'll be turning 50 years old. I was a young boy when Bill Curry was head coach at Alabama, but I've never gotten the full reason why he stepped down, resigned, and went to Kentucky. What do you know? What can you share about that?
You know, I obviously wasn't in the conversations with the administration. You know, I believe that they weren't real happy from day one he was hired. They interviewed my father. I thought I was going to Alabama with my father. We talked to Brad Scott as going with us to Florida State. Terry was going to take the Sanford job, take Jeff. Daddy was going to Alabama. I was going to go with him. Brad Scott was going to go with him. That was all set. Then all of a sudden they came home, and then Coach Curry had gotten the job. So there were a lot of people unhappy from the beginning. And unfortunately, that's not a place you want to go to where you have a divided fan base from day one. And he had to overcome that. Didn't have great success. I might have won. I don't know how many the first year, maybe 7. Then we won 8, and then I think we won 10 that last year. But it wasn't a happy fan base. And I believe 2 of the major ingredients. I don't think we beat Auburn any of those 3 years. That's not good. I was not familiar with the hatred between Georgia Tech and Alabama years back. I believe, I don't know who the coach was. I want to say Bobby Bowden, Bear Bryant, or I'm not sure who, but I did not realize there was a history, not a good one, between Georgia Tech and Alabama going way back. And some of the old timers that were there, I believe, helped that against him. So he didn't have a full deck when he went, unfortunately. And then going 10-1. I remember we were 10-1. We lost to Alabama. I lost to Miami in the bowl. I'll go into the locker room, and I'd heard rumors that he was going to Kentucky. I said, we just played Miami in the Sugar Bowl. I'm at Alabama. Why am I going to Kentucky? Kentucky's a good place, and I went and enjoyed it, but didn't have the statue in the pool in the history of Alabama. And so immediately after that game, he was gone. And,
wow.
I was Hootie Ingram came in. I think Coach Stallings came in, and our Hootie Ingram was the AD and brought Coach Stallings in, and then I headed off to Kentucky to be his offensive coordinator.
So, Coach Bowden, let's talk about your head coaching beginning. You got the job at Tulane. How did that opportunity come about? And talk about that undefeated season that you had at Tulane, please.
It wasn't a job I was really interested in when it first came open. I was a coordinator, been a coordinator for a while, and was looking to get in. But, everybody wants a really good job, and the good jobs don't come open that often. You've got to take a job like Tulane or some other place that's not winning and build it up. But eventually I started thinking about it. I said, man, Mac Brown was there. In his 5th year, he won 7 games and got the North Carolina job. I said, man, I think I can go there and win 7. I said, by my 5th year, and then maybe get a job like North Carolina, or build that into something like my father did, one of the other. And the first year, and timing was really good. I had a great quarterback, Sean King. Guy named Buddy Tevens, who has since passed away, was the head coach, and he recruited pretty good, at least for what I wanted. He had some nice little skill guys that could catch, quarterback that could throw, some really hungry guys on defense. I had a good staff. We played inside Superdome every game. So throwing the ball and spreading the ball, the first time really, I think a team married the no-huddle fast pace. Hired Rich Rodriguez, offensive coordinator, and by married it, we did it. It's not something we went into at 2 minutes or the end of the half or the end of the game. We married it from snap one, no-huddle, fast break, hit it and get it offense. Defenses weren't ready for it. So we won 7 that first game. That first year we won 7. Arkansas I talked to Coach Broyles about going up there, and his wife called my wife, and I said, man, I've only been here 1 year. He wanted me to get on a plane and come visit, and I knew if I did that, I'd probably go because I was used to a campus. Alabama had a campus. West Virginia had a campus. Auburn had a campus. A campus. And Tulane doesn't really have that because it's right in the middle of the city. And I knew if I went to Arkansas, I said I'd go. I said no, I'm not going. I need to stay here for another year, at least another year. So stayed that second year and went undefeated. But we just we had the defense played really good, had a good defensive staff, and then we won 12 games.
Yes,
Coach. I was going to ask this question before you mentioned the Arkansas story. What's one job you didn't take that you wish you would have?
I don't know if there is any because Arkansas, the 6 months before I left Clemson, I actually met with Arkansas again. A guy named Jeff Long was the AD, and I coached with him at Duke, and I met with him in Clemson twice. and he had the plane, and I about told him I was going one night, and he had the contract there, and I said, well, I'm gonna sit and pray with my wife, and I think if after I pray, sleep on it and pray about it, if I feel like I do tomorrow morning, we're going. We're going. My wife went out and bought a red dress. Of course, Clemson, you don't buy a red because that's South Carolina's color. But for the press conference, and I called my SID in and said, listen, I'm going to call my coaches off the road. And I about went, but I don't know if I would have, I don't know if that's one I wish I would have taken. God's put me in some great places. Alabama and Auburn. Who from Birmingham gets to coach at both of those places? Duke,
Right.
a great academic institution. Players played hard. You kind of learn how to manipulate those, or work with those type of players that are great effort guys. And man, I've coached Florida State, Kentucky. I could go on Tulane. I've coached some great places. So even though the Arkansas thing didn't work out, they took that plane. Didn't take him long to take that plane, go to Atlanta, pick up Bobby Petrino, and have tremendous success. So
Right.
They made the right decision. I think even though I only stayed 6 more months at Clemson, I think it was the right thing.
So, Coach Bowden, after Tulane, you got the head coaching job at Clemson. Talk about how that opportunity of going from Tulane to Clemson came about.
Well, when you're going undefeated at a place like Tulane, you're going to get some opportunities. There are about 7 schools I had picked out. I said, if I'm ever blessed enough to get one of these 7 jobs, I'd love to have. At that particular time, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Clemson. And I'd been at Duke. I knew North Carolina was a really good football state. North Carolina's got the kind of top notch in that state. If I ever get a chance to get one of those, and I happened to win at Tulane, and Clemson came open. So I said, man alive. Of course, they called and expressed an interest. I remember meeting with them on I think a Thursday or a Friday. I met with them on Friday, and then AD from South Carolina flew in on Saturday. I met with them, and I felt like they were going to pick Lou Holtz, which they did. He didn't tell me that, but ended up going to Clemson. That's where I wanted. I just, they were an SEC school in the ACC. I'd been in the SEC for 11 years, and Clemson at that particular time was an SEC school in the ACC, as far as environment, stadium, passion, and those type of things.
Coach, I'm going to reverse my question that I asked you here recently. What's one job you really wanted but didn't get?
I really, I always wanted jobs. I interviewed at Kentucky. I probably wasn't ready for it. When I was at Auburn, the AD and somebody, a board member, flew down and met me in Auburn at my house. And I said, man, going to Kentucky. Ended up hiring a guy named Hal Mummies, who they ended up hiring, which probably worked out well. They had a lot of success under him. But at that particular time in my career, I said, man, I'd love to go get that job. I was disappointed when I didn't. And I went to Ole Miss to interview when Tommy Tuberville got the job. Me and my wife flew over on a private plane. They took us around, and I, met with the board, and I kind of wanted that one, but they were coming off probation, and I didn't feel as comfortable. And Tommy and Tuberville ended up obviously getting the job and doing a great job. But the Kentucky one, I wanted a little bit more. They didn't have to fight that probation thing. But I didn't get it, but it worked out good. Yeah, I mean, God knows exactly what He's doing, and He surely did that.
Coach, we are up against our final break, and when we come back, we are going to dive into your career at Clemson University and talk about the rivalry and the brawl between South Carolina and Clemson in 2004. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to The Stingray Show, finishing it up with Coach Tommy Bowden right after this.
Spring is blooming at Tuscaloosa Farmers Co-op, your one-stop shop for everything you need to grow healthy plants all season long. Come explore our fully stocked garden center featuring trusted names like High Yield and Fertiloom. And don't miss our Bonnie Plant Sale happening now through May. It's the perfect time to stock up on quality vegetables, herbs, and flowers. Whether you're planting a backyard garden or prepping your fields, Tuscaloosa Farmers Co-op has the tools, knowledge, and products to help you grow. Come see us, 4301 McFarland Boulevard, or call us, 205-339-8181.
we want to welcome you back inside the final segment of the Stingray Show. Our guest this evening is Tommy Bowden, the former Clemson head coach who was at Clemson for 10 years and coached in 117 games for the Clemson Tigers. And we are going to finish it up talking with him exclusively about the job for the Clemson Tigers, where he won the ACC Coach of the Year twice, once in 99 and the other one in 2003. So, Coach, I know that you were on a time crunch. I've got 3 questions left, and then we will let you get out of here. The first one, talk about how much pressure was on you at Clemson to face off against your dad for the first time in the Bowden Bowl, please.
You know, it wasn't a whole bunch of pressure simply because, and I didn't realize this till the next year we went to Tallahassee. Clemson had gone to Tallahassee for 10 years, 5 games, and not scored a touchdown. The standard wasn't that high. Score a touchdown, Tallahassee, they'd be happy. You know, just score some points against Florida State. So that expectation. Now, we were ahead 13-3 at halftime. Ended up losing 17-13, I think, or we might have had 10-3, but we ended up lost close. I lost my next 4 and got 3. He won the first 4 in a row and killed me. The next 3 he killed me. He just killed me. I said, "Oh man!" Then the pressure mounted. Say, "Hey, we hired you to beat Bobby Bowden. You got to beat him. You got to beat Florida State. They're the what Clemson is now in the ACC." So I ended up winning 4 out of my last 5, which relieved some of that pressure. But there's pressure, and that's as a coach, spending time in the SEC and being brought up my father and his success, you want those type of environments. That's what you want. It pushes you to your max professionally. So, but there was tremendous pressure. Not the first year, maybe not the second, because the second year we went to Tallahassee and they hadn't scored a touchdown in 10 years. I said, "Hey," and we scored one, so that was a victory. But it did intensify. But fortunately, we responded, and I remember, gosh, I'd lost 4 in a row to Florida State. The AD called me and said, "Hey, we hired you to beat Florida State." Then I beat my father 4 out of 5. His AD called him and said, "Hey, we hired you to beat Tommy Bowden at Clemson." So they fired us both, and they took care of that. They fired us both. That wasn't a problem.
So, Coach Bowden, your first year at Clemson, you made it to play Mississippi State, but then lost that game. Yeah. Talk about going to a bowl game your first season at Clemson, and then ultimately wrapping up the season against Mississippi State.
Well, they were coming off a 3-win season before I was hired. We doubled it and got 6 wins. Back then, 6 wins, and I think we won 5 conference games. In fact, that year I got ACC Coach of the Year. Now, my father went undefeated. My father won the national championship. My father beat us in Clemson, and I got Coach of the Year. So I think there's some kind of sentimental value in that.
Right. But
I think in Mississippi State that year, they were a 10-win team. At least after the bowl game, I think they were a 10-win team. So it was 10-3, or it was a low-scoring game. We just couldn't do anything offensively.
I was actually there, Coach. 17-7.
Okay, 17-7. I remember it's a low-scoring game. We couldn't generate any offense, but it was good in the first year because your fan base is okay. First year he went from 3, doubled his wins. And the next year we won 9, so we went from 3 to 6 to 9. So it looked like we were making progress and trying to do things right and having some success. But playing Mississippi State that first game was 6-5. Doesn't seem like much now, but back then where Clemson was as a program, it showed some movement in the right direction.
Now, Coach, you took Clemson to a bowl game every single season you were there except one in 2004 because of a brawl in the Palmetto Bowl, which is your arch rival of South Carolina. Coach, what happened on that field that day that you think led up to that brawl and both teams not playing in a bowl game?
This is not excuse, but it's the mindset of a 19-year-old and 20-year-old at that time. That's who I was coaching. But that Friday night, two basketball teams got in a huge brawl, and it worked its way up in the stands. I mean, it was just total chaos, and it was a huge fight. I don't know who the two teams were, but they played it over and over and over. Saturday morning, biggest fight they ever had, played it over. My players, they just saw that and it got saturated in their mind. I didn't think anything about it. Then we're playing South Carolina, our rivalry, a couple of things. Number Lou Holtz had announced his retirement. So they did really, in essence, their players did not have a head coach on the sideline. He was not going to be the guy. And then playing in Clemson, we had an SEC crew. And as you pregame ritual, our team stands up at the top of the hill and runs down. ACC officials know, hey, go down there and stand in the end zone. Keep the opponent's teams from filtering down there and stand at the bottom and taunting us, Well, SEC officials wasn't familiar with that. Let South Carolina go down there, stand at the bottom, taunting us. So the intensity of being a rivalry game, that fight before, they didn't have a head coach. They were taunting us before the game. It was just it was the perfect storm for a fight. And boy, once it broke out, could not stop it. I was so sore for the next 3 days trying to grab 300-pound linemen and pull them off. They don't budge. 170 pounds trying to pull off 370, it don't work. Right. So and then even though we were bowl eligible, they penalized us, didn't let us go. Our administration, not the bowl. We qualified. Actually, I would have qualified every year as a head coach to a bowl and gone to a bowl, but they didn't let us go. And that's sad for the players, even. And the 5 guys that they finally viewed the film, they suspended them for a game. Or I think I had to suspend them for 1 game next season. But I hated that for the players. But, we did it, and I was the head coach, so I was the one ultimately to blame.
Coach, I'm going to ask you a fun question because all brothers fight, and I'm sure you and Terry still argue who was the better coach. But I do want to share a funny story. I remember in your first year, you had a big win. I can't remember who it was, but your brother was in the studio with John Saunders on ABC. And I'll never forget, John Saunders looked at Terry and he goes, "Hey, do you have any advice for your brother in his first year?" He goes, "Yeah, don't go undefeated your first year." Which I immediately laughed because we all know Terry had that great season at Auburn and went from there. But what do you and Terry get to bicker about, argue about, have fun with? Who was the better coach or whatever it might be?
Well, when Terry got the head coaching job at Auburn, I was there with Coach Dye, and he kept me on the staff. I was grateful because I'd only been there for 2 years. I didn't want to leave again. I'd done a lot of movement, so I was very fortunate that he kept me and learned a lot of. He was very organized, and he was he just took my father's game plan on as Nick Saban calls the process. He took my father's process and just used it. So everywhere he went, he used it and had success. He did the same thing that he plugged in at Auburn, going undefeated that first year. So I learned a lot from him because I didn't study my father as much. I was under other guys. I was under Pat Dye, under Bill Curry, under Steve Sloan. I had other influences. Terry really only had one, and he just studied, saturated his mind with everything my father did from the moment he got up in the morning till when he went to bed in involvement with the football program. So I learned a whole bunch from Terry, really about my father and how to run a program from being very detailed and organized.
So, Coach, look, man, we have thoroughly enjoyed listening to you reminisce about your career. My final thing for you, if you would, because I heard this story on another interview that you did, would you please tell us and our audience about the time that your dad left your sister behind at a restaurant?
A lot of people think how could you do that? But, first of all, we had a station wagon. We had 8 people in a station wagon, 3 in front, 3 in the back, two in the way back, with all the beach stuff. And there are no seat belts, that suicide seat in the middle of the front between both parents with no seat belt. That went to which child that was acting up the most. Had to sit there because a wreck, they're going through the front windshield.
Terry seat, right?
Yeah. Probably wouldn't make it. But we used to drive from Tallahassee to Alligator Point or Panama City. I think this made Panama on Highway 20. Still a straight shot from on Highway 20 to Panama City, and get in the car one morning, stop in Bristol, Florida for pancakes, and then he'd load us up. We'd go to spend all day at the beach, and then we'd turn around and drive back. But I think, I think this was a trip to Birmingham to see, or it might have been to Birmingham to see his relatives. But anyway, we're all packed in that station wagon. And I remember my father driving. I was way back in the back, and I see this blue light back behind us. And I specifically remember my father saying, Ann, I know I wasn't my mother. Ann, I know I wasn't speeding. So he pulled over, and the trooper walks up to the window. He rolls down his dash. I know I wasn't speeding. He says, no. He says, do you have everybody? And he said, what? He said, do you have all your children? So then my father got out. He turned around and he started bringing us out one by one. All right, here's one. Here's two. Here's three. Here's four. Here's five. Where's Ginger? And we had stopped at a restaurant to eat. She went to the bathroom, Ginger, the youngest. She is now a state attorney down here in Florida. But she was the youngest and gone to the bathroom. Everybody got in. They didn't count heads. And sure enough, we left one. I had to turn around and go back and get her, and continue on the trip. Actually happened, but, 5 kids in a station wagon, all packed in there. How do they know? But yes. She's still with us, though.
I got you. So, Coach, you mentioned that you were doing a speaking engagement here in the state of Alabama. Please let everybody know again when that is and where they can come and hear you.
It's this Saturday in Andalusia.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's 5:36. I haven't looked at my final itinerary yet. It's a few days away, but I do know it's Saturday night in Andalusia. It's a men's dinner, men's steak dinner, okay. I believe. So anybody that hears this is close. I'm sure they're welcome. They'd love to have you. So be a good night of faith, family, and a little bit of football.
Awesome,
Coach. You talk about food. This will be my last question, but it's a fun one. On all your recruiting visits in home, what meal did you eat the most? Because I heard Phil Fulmer say he ate more meatloaf than he thinks than anybody on the planet. So what meal did you eat the most?
Probably chicken and barbecue, being down where I was recruiting. And it seems like I had a bunch of fried chicken, which I love, because that's all we got when I was growing up. And barbecue would probably be the two that I had the most of.
There you go.
Coach Bowden, look, man, thank you as always for taking time out of your schedule. Please come back and join us anytime, because we've got a ton more questions for you about your time at Clemson and at Tulane. And enjoy your speaking engagement this weekend in Andalusia, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Y'all have a good weekend. Have a good summer.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So there, of course, ladies and gentlemen, was former Clemson head coach and Alabama native Tommy Bowden. And we really do want to thank him for joining us. And Heath, let's just briefly go over his coaching record as a head coach. Get this, at Tulane, the first year, 7-4. The second year, 12-0. Then he goes to Clemson, 6-6. The next year, 9-3. The following year, 7-5, 7-6, 9-4, 6-5, 8-4, 8-5. 9-4, and then when he retired, 3-3. So he's, as a head coach, he never had a losing season, and that speaks volumes.
Yeah, and another thing I want to add to that, Stephen, if you add all that up, his coaching record was 90-49 overall.
Yep.
That is very impressive. And so, a lot of people want to look at a lot of different things with coaches. I would have loved to seen Coach Bowden in the SEC. The good Lord was obviously not leading him to Arkansas, but man, oh man, right after Houston Nutt, and I thought Houston Nutt didn't get a fair deal leaving Arkansas,
right.
And there was some talent on that team. He could have done some big things at Arkansas. And he chose not to, and he's completely at peace about that. And I was happy to hear him talk about that here on this show. But yeah, Stephen, 90-49 overall, and not a single losing season in his career. That's amazing.
And Heath, let me also say this before we go to break. I would have loved, because we've got to see son versus dad of Bobby and Tommy. I would have loved to have seen with two of the best teams that they had, Terry versus Tommy of Clemson versus Auburn.
Yeah, it would have been
That would have been
really,
insane.
yeah, it would have been really, really fun.
Yeah.
I'll never forget back in the day, you know, the build up.
Yes.
Even, I mean, we all know about Florida and Florida State, and that game was legendary every year with Spurrier and Bowden. It was just amazing to watch that game. And I'll never forget when Terry got at Auburn, that was a big deal in the SEC. College game day back in the, early 90s, mid
Mhm.
90s, they went on campus. They were there doing Sports Center for the week at
Yes.
Auburn. And
Yes.
that wasn't a big matchup. This was the Sun, taking on Spurrier.
Right.
And I mean, that's how big a deal that rivalry was back in the day. So, to hear Tommy, being able to coach at Florida State, being able to coach at Auburn, being able to coach at Alabama, as head coach at Tulane and also Clemson, he had a lot of fun stops and his playing career at West Virginia. But he had a lot of fun stops, and man, you're right. If we had a time machine, we could make some things happen. That would have been something that the media would have shut down,
Yes.
and that all odds of college football for that 1 week would be on that game. I miss those days, Stephen. We don't get that anymore.
Thank you, NIL and transfer portal. You SOB, son of Bobby.
Son of Bobby. But yeah, it's sad where college football is going and is gone,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be fixed. It's ruined. We're still going to watch. We're still going to love it, but it's not going to be the same. Here's the fun thing, Stephen. Even if you're a 5-star quarterback and you come to a place like Alabama or Notre Dame or, Florida or Georgia or whatever, you're not staying for 4 years.
No.
You're not staying for 3 years. The likelihood of you staying there your entire career, those days are gone. And that's what rips my heart out. Those days are gone. It's whoever has the most money, and it makes sense.
So that is going to put a wrap on this edition of the Stingray Show. Like I said, really do want to thank Tommy Bowden for joining us on this edition. When we come back tomorrow evening, which is going to be Wednesday, we are going to be doing a deep dive into a big event this weekend in the state of Alabama, over in East Alabama, Talladega. NASCAR comes to Talladega, and we are going to be joined by Chris Myers of NASCAR on Fox to do a deep dive into Dega and what it means to race at Talladega. We will catch you tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., our normal scheduled time, for the interview with Chris Myers about getting into shake and bake and boogity boogity boogity. Let's go racing, boys, at Talladega. Hey, West Alabama, bet you didn't know this. If you're craving some mouth-watering seafood, South's Finest Meats right here in Tuscaloosa offers crab legs, crab claws, red shrimp, raw shrimp, tilapia fillets, catfish strips, and catfish fillets. They also have hamburger patties made daily, as well as chuck roasts, ribeye steaks, New York strips, pork chops, and as well as chicken leg quarters. You can find all of this deliciousness and a whole lot more at 3201 10th Avenue right there in Tuscaloosa. Go by South's Finest Meats and be treated like an MVP.